I dedicate this lesson to my God, Amen Rah, to my prophet, Professor Paul Nathaniel Johnson. For without him, this would not be possible. Before we get into the lesson, I would like to have a prelude, so to speak. The first part of the lesson came the history of Hathor, called Hathor by the Greeks. We call her Mertharti. These lessons show the multitude of things that this goddess accomplished in her lifetime. Some of the things that are attributed to her, we have taken for granted that this was someone else. Someone else has used other names. We use these names to give recognition to her and the things that she accomplished. The lesson is entitled Hathor the Beautiful. The assembly will be here, woman raw. In the name of the Most High God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to the Most High God, King on the day of judgment. Hathor the Beautiful. Some of the names will seem strange. Some of the names you will hear if you are a history buff. These names you can go and look them up. If you are a history buff, you can go and look these names up, and you would be surprised to find out that these names are calling on this goddess, Mertharti, called Hathor by the Greeks. The Queen of Sheba had hair on her ankles, and by descent was a genie. These genies are not pure spirits, but corporal beings. But they have certain mysterious powers of appearing and disappearing, or even changing their aspect and temporarily assuming human form. And when they are offended, they can avenge themselves in a supernatural way. And that was what she did in her case with Solomon. Read the Songs of Solomon. In accordance with the writings of the Christians and Jewish writers, the degradation or the degrading of the agricultural almond affected the Attilic Kim, who was dragged down in the fall of Set. Pan, who had been a merry spirit, now caused sudden flight, and among the Greeks he became a bad demon. He was the Hebrews, Obs, O-B-S, who twittered and muttered low out of the ground. This person can be found in the Holy Bible, Isaiah chapter 8, verse 19. Also Isaiah chapter 29, verse 4. While Hathor was the Irish Belitha, Kim and Hathor, as god and goddesses of fortune, were the familiar spirits mentioned so often in the Hebrew writings. The demons were considered by the Jews as descendants of the giants who were offsprings of the fallen angels. If you did not know exactly what this was, this particular chapter, we looked it up, in this particular chapter, Generations 6th chapter, 2nd and 4th verse, makes mention of when the sons and daughters of God saw the daughters of men, that they took them all of what they chose for their wives and husbands, that the children that were born were considered giants. This particular paragraph is showing you or telling you something about those giants. Those giants were not necessarily large in style, in size, but in the things that they accomplished were things considered grand. Under this manifestation, the degraded Kim became the little devils of modern times. Hathor's priestesses became witches, and Hathor herself the spooks whom these witches conjured or raised up by their incantation and charms. Kim, as a wine god, was the Greek Dionysus, and Issachar, the Latin Bacchus, and Aryan Raman, and also the Hebrew Noah, Lot, and Isaac. So we find the name Kim. The name Kim mentioned in our text has other names also attributed to him. And one of the names attributed to Kim was the name Noah, a name familiar. We are familiar with the name Noah, Lot, and Isaac. Hathor, or Merhati, as inventress of the plow and mill, became the Phoenicians, Israelite, Jewish, and Babylonians Baalitis, Assyrian Bittis or Biltis, and the Japanese Tayokubim, the abundant food lady. This particular name was used by these different nations of people to describe this lady in their own tongue. The Hindus, Lekashimi or Siri, Greek, Demeter, Latin, Liberia, and Roman, Sirius. Some of these names may sound familiar to you. These names will come back to you, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when we get to other names in this lesson. As inventress of the loom, Hathor was Aphrodite, Aprilis, from which comes the European calendar month April. With poets, Aprilis was a type of inconsistency. She was also Penelope, the weaver, and Archime, the spider. As inventors of the loom, she became an allegory, goddess of the hearth and the fire on the hearth. As goddess of the home and fireside, she was the Egyptian or Hamite Meskenith, Hindu Sawaha, Greek Hesperia, Latin Vesta, also Jatuna, the Vestal wife of Janus and goddess of fountains. Some of these names were used by other nations of people. As goddess of childbirth, she was the Hamite Meskenith, Greek Ilathea, and Latin Ilgeria. She was Concordia, goddess of Concord, Liberatus, goddess of liberty, and Liberatituna, goddess of voluptuous delight. That statue that you see in the harbor of New York Harbor was dedicated to her by another name. By another name. These people use these names to hide our history, to hide the history of this woman, this goddess. And the reason for that is to keep us from knowing exactly the history of what these people accomplished. What made them a goddess was, or a god, was the fact that they used what was taught to them for the benefit of mankind. And what we have done, we have gotten away from that original idea. Today, everybody is going for themselves. When the original idea at one time was God created gods, male and female, created he them, and he gave them dominion over everything. That is, he gave them everything that they needed to survive. And the pyramid priest, later on down the line, when the pyramids were built after Menes sought to get in good favor with the Pharaoh by introducing taxation and other things. This is where this idea that we see that is flourishing today. This is why we are paying for things that we already own. You are paying for these things. When God gave you these things, God gave you everything that you needed to survive. He gave you dominion over everything. If he gave us dominion over everything, why are we paying out of the teeth right now? As goddess of truth, he was the Egyptian Hamite Maya, Cappadocia, Ma, Greek, and Latin Maya, which comes the European calendar month, May. May was attributed to her also. Mayat. Mayat. We use the word Mayat. Mayat is Merhati all over again, used by another people. As the standard of beauty, Hathor becomes Moabite, Ashtar, Babylonian, and Assyrian, Ishtar, Hebrew, Ishtar, Phoenician, Jewish and Syrian Astartes, meaning good fortune. Also the Chaldean Belit and Melita, Hebrew, Ada. These are different names that different nationalities of people have given to Merhati. These are names that they use to hide the fact that they're using your goddess, the goddess Merhati, talking about her. Cemeterian, Aphinet, Greek, Aphrodite, Latin, Venus, another name that you can remember. The name Venus is another name attributed to Merhati. Norris, Freya, Hindu, Bhavani, and Rambaha. Also the Grace and the Muses. Hathor was the favorite heroine in stories of love and adventure such as Ariadne's, Delphine's, Europa, Dido, Helen, and etc. Hathor became the Phoenicians, Jewish, and Syrians Baal-gad, goddess of good luck. Greek Hecate, goddess of magic and of ghosts, and Tai Chi, goddess of chance, also Latin, Fortuna. After the introduction of the phallic worship, Hathor became the Egyptian Hamite Bast. We have a picture of Bast on our wall here in our Netrachet, in our school, in honor of Hathor. After the introduction of the phallic worship, Hathor became the Egyptian Hamite Bast, and as such, she was the Phoenicians' Ashtoreth, star goddess, astronomy, star naming, Hindu, Atar, Diva, Greek, Armentis, and Latin, Dana. The cat was dedicated to Bast. As a cat-headed goddess, she became a huntress. As the Greek Elrina, called Irina, and Latin Pax, she was the goddess of peace. She was also Electra, the lightning. As Bonadia, the good goddess, she was the Italian Fortuna, from Fari. In this capacity, she became the nymph and naiads and the Christian modern fairies. The moon was dedicated to Hathor, and as a moon goddess, she became the Assyrian Ra, Hindu Chandra, Greek Daoni, Dodana, Io, Cynthia, Salina, Phoebe, Latin, Luna, Persian, Nanani. As goddess of eternal youth, she was the Greek Hebe and Latin Iris, the rainbow. As goddess of gardens and shady groves, she filled the earth with fruit and springtime flowers. As Aurora, she was the Sosi-fingered goddess of the dawn. She was called the heavenly one, the starry one, the star-eyed goddess. Horus, Hebrews Tubal, and Horus Anubis, Tubal Cain. Genesis 4th chapter, 19th verse. And Lamech, who was another name for our God, Noom, took unto him 2 wives. The name of one was Adar, Hathor, and the name of the other was Zillah, Isis. Verse 20. And Adar bore Jabal, which was Kim. He was the father of such as dwell in tents, and of such as have cattle. Verse 21. And his brother's name was Jubal, who was Anubis, the musician. He was the father of such as handles the harp and organ. Verse 22 of Genesis. And Zillah, Isis, she also bore Tubal Cain, who was Horus Anubis, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron, and the sister of Tubal Cain was Nahama. Isis becomes the Chaldean Zerubbanite, Hebrew Zillah, Zipporah, Zariah, Zalippah, and Leah, Hindu Daaga, and Greek Hera. Her titles were Queen of Heaven. Jeremiah chapter 44, verse 17, and it reads, and the royal spouse, verse 17, but we will certainly do whatsoever thing goes forth out of our own mouth to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offering unto her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our kings and our princes, in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For them had we plenty of victuals, and were well, and saw no evil. Read verse 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Chapter 44 says the Jews, idolaters in Egypt, they were called idolaters because they looked up our goddesses Isis as Queen of Heaven. This goes for we blacks. When we look up to the mother of Jesus as the mother of God, as the mother of God's only begotten Son, we become idolaters, the same as they did in Judah and Jerusalem. The holy mountain, Mount Sinai, was sacred to Thoth Osiris. Ai is the imperfect form of Jah, and Sinai means Sinjah or Thoth Osiris. With that, peace be with you. Bisalam Yasarak Abindi. I hope you get something out of this lesson. You historical buffs, look these names up. Try to trace these names back. You use them every day. Now you get an idea of where these names are coming from, how they were used. Their original origin was your goddesses, your gods and goddesses. Peace be with you, my gods and goddesses.